Are you a hardworking doctor who wants to live a great life without the stress of managing your finances? Training to become a doctor is a monumental task, and as you transition into practice, you face new workloads and major life decisions. Financial planning becomes crucial, but knowing where to start can be overwhelming. That's where Ren Financial Planning comes in. Ren Financial Planning helps doctors use money as a tool to live great lives.
With Rand Financial Planning, you can stop stressing about finances and instead focus on what matters most. They understand the challenges you face, and that's why they're here to handle the details and solidify a financial plan that keeps you in control without having to manage all the specifics. And here's the best part. Rand Financial Planning offers a transparent pricing model. Say goodbye to hidden fees, kickbacks, or commissions. With their flat fee model, you'll know exactly what to expect.
At Ren Financial Planning, it's about more than just your money. Their team is dedicated to helping you make smarter financial decisions that align with your vision of a fulfilling life. So if you're a doctor ready to live a great life without the stress of managing your finances, reach out to the team at Ren Financial Planning today. Click the link in the show notes now to schedule a no-cost triage meeting with one of their planners to discuss how they might be able to help.
Finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Welcome back to another weekly episode of our guests on BS Free MD. And this week we have Dr. Sheila Carroll, and we're talking and addressing false beliefs about health and weight. Our guest is both a pediatrician and obesity medicine physician. And she joins us and discusses her transition from clinical medicine into coaching. And she shares her own struggles with weight and how she found success in coaching programs. So Dr. Carroll believes that coaching is essential for helping patients implement lifestyle changes. And she offers a unique perspective on promoting health and well-being. So we love this one. Let's dive in and we'll get right into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another fun week. This week, we have a great guest for you, Dr. Sheila Carroll, who comes to us from the East Coast of the world. And she is
the world has a coast?
Yeah,
I think it would be the East Coast of the United States. Yeah, that's right. Because
the United States is the world.
We're Americocentric, so everything else, it's like,
okay,
whatever.
I stand corrected. It's a bad moment of the morning as we start this off. But welcome to the show, Dr. Carroll. Thanks for being here with us and to put up with our silliness.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
So we connected on a podcasting matching site. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to advertise for them. And I was really excited about your talking points about how we can help our kids live a healthy lifestyle and how to encourage that by modeling that behavior ourselves. And also, even if our kids are healthy, how to not impact them in a negative way with our false beliefs and thinking they should be different. And so how to help parents help their kids lead a good physical, metabolic, mental health life. And so tell us, without me going into too much of your background, you're basically a board certified physician and obesity medicine physician as well. And now you're a certified life coach, mostly doing coaching with your clients. So tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into coaching from pediatrics.
Sure. I got into coaching a few years ago now because I was struggling myself. And I've been a pediatrician for about 23 years. I've also been a person who's struggled with my weight my whole life since I was about 9 years old. So I was an overweight child. I was a child carrying extra weight. I was a teen. then I was a young adult, and up and down, off and on, for the majority of my life. And became a doctor, and then I had this job, which was stressful, number one, but also like the exact opposite of healthy, like, not getting much sleep, not having time to exercise, not really, having any time that I felt to focus on myself. And I just felt like, what am I doing? What's going on? And at the same time, there was another female doctor at my hospital who had joined a coaching program, and it was a coaching program for weight loss for women physicians. And I had never heard of life coaching before. And I don't know if that's just Maine being like, we're behind the times up here. We have 2 Chick-fil-A's in the whole state.
It's clearly the lobster.
Exactly. So I saw my colleague changing, not only changing her physical self, like her losing weight and changing her body, but also like emotionally changing, and she was enjoying her job more. And so anyways, I looked into it and I signed up for that exact same program, and I learned about coaching, and I really realized, like, whoa, this is what I need, number one, but it's also what a lot of my patients need, because what it helps you do is once you know what to do, then you need the coaching aspect of things, or the coaching aspect of things can help you figure out how you're actually going to do that. Because as doctors, we tell people what to do. We're very action line oriented. Eat this, don't eat that, do exercise this much, sleep this much. But then we send the patient off and home, and then they're like, how am I supposed to eat that? How am I supposed to do that? I've never done that before. How am I supposed to get myself to do what I really want to do? And that's where the power of coaching comes in. So
I love it, because, we've talked about this a lot and really briefly, and you'd know that in a busy practice, when you're actually doing clinical medicine, treating disease and illness, when you're doing those wellness checks, or someone has that question, even if you have the knowledge and expertise, you don't always have the time, and you don't get reimbursed for that time to sit down and go, okay, yes, I have a lot of knowledge or experience. If you do in that area, this is how you do it. I would try that sometimes, and I'd have to bill it almost like a counseling visit for 60 minutes, because I'm like, how else am I going to justify this time? Because yes, it does take a lot of time to sit down, instead of just telling someone, well, go do these healthy things, figure it out. And even making the referral to the dietitian. Sometimes I wouldn't agree what the local dietitian was saying, or coach fit. There weren't a lot of fitness coaches. So you're right. It's hard as physicians.
Medicine is not set up to really improve their lifestyle.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Well, that's exactly.
We talk about whether it should be, or
I don't think it should be.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be. I think that if you're going to be trained for upwards of 20 years to do a skill, that is a very sharp instrument that is very honed to do certain things. So I want doctors to treat sick people. Now, it doesn't mean that doctors can't be involved in coaching or these other aspects and could coach coaches and so forth. But what they've done, at least in primary care with the metric box ticking, is they've tried to make us really crappy life coaches. Well, you can't be a life coach in 10 minutes at a time. And so then what ends up happening is we ask somebody how many, beers they drink, do they feel sad, whatever. And if they trigger the box in the depression screening, then what happens? Do they get coaching on why they're sad? No, they get a pill. So everyone's happy. The system is happy because you've cranked the patient through in 10 or 15 minutes. The pharmaceutical industry is happy because you've written another prescription. The government's happy because they think that they're doing this thing that increases quality of care by these metrics. And in my opinion, you're just jamming a hockey stick into the spokes of the bicycle of what's actually going on. When we could be hiring non-medicine trained life coaches and fitness coaches and so forth, that would have far more profound benefit on people's lives at a fraction of the cost.
Or they could be medicine trained like she is, but that's what their primary role is, to be coaching.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So two things, like, and also the other problem is you can't coach people who don't want to be coached.
Exactly.
So many times patients show up in the office and they don't want what you're selling them. They don't even want, so that's one thing. And for sure in pediatrics, so it's just using weight as an example. If you have a child that's carrying extra weight, the medical model is to bring your child to the doctor. You and your child, the mom or the parent and the child show up, and then the doctor is supposed to kind of talk to the child about changing what they're eating and sleeping better, doing all of these things. And that poor little kid, their brain is not even close to being able to process any of that. The kid doesn't need to be there for that visit. But like you mentioned, then you can't just have a visit with a parent without the child, because you can't get reimbursed for that. And, so it's the whole setup for pediatrics. And it was super challenging, and it was so ineffective, and it was extremely frustrating, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And I'm just sitting here thinking of examples in my head of, because I haven't been in primary care for a long time. We were, and then I switched over to the urgent care side back in 2010. But even I'm thinking back to just what I can recall of parents that come in and they want help. And you're right, the kid's sitting there and they could be 10, and the parent's like, well, they go to the Boys and Girls Club after school and they're active and they eat healthy, and we don't know what to do. And so I'm sitting there looking at this kid who, you're right, they're just sitting there. You can't tell the kid what to do. The parent wants some advice. And it's like, where do you even start? Clearly, the doctor's office, it just didn't seem like the right place. It was like, I'm thinking of back when we used to start having parenting classes for people on, how to take care of babies and discipline your kids. I was thinking, well, isn't this the same kind of thing? Shouldn't there be parenting classes for how to model healthy eating, or what does that look like? That's what I was thinking in my head, but there's like nothing around.
Yeah,
And
but the problem is that if you wanted to have parenting classes in school, it's so politically screwed up with all of these factions. I mean, you'd have the sugar industry freaking out and having, their speaker. And it's, and then you'd have, just look at what's happened. But as soon as it goes into school, public school is a political entity. You can say it is or it isn't, but it is. That's what it is. And, it just, if you've seen what's happened with big food and big pharma and big tobacco and all these massive interests, they have a way of crafting narratives. And so I think you got to get away from trying to change the system. I am convinced changing the system is a fool's errand. I think you have to invent your own system, and then you spread the gospel, and then you make disciples. It is literally Jesus, the itinerant preacher, walking around Palestine with a gaggle of people that then becomes the biggest religion in the world. That's how you change the world, not by going, okay, we're going to work through the system. No, the system's entirely corrupted. It's like trying to do marriage classes in a brothel. Not going to happen, kids.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I agree that, in today's culture, food culture, screen culture, you have to go against the grain. You have to be weird and abnormal to keep your kid, I use a term like preserve and protect your child's health, because the way our food system is, the way our school food, the Little League Snack Shack, just our, birthday parties, everything. And what we consider normal for kids is actually really unhealthy in our current food system. So, there's a huge education part of this that we all need. I needed it myself. I didn't get any education about nutrition in medical school, and the stuff I did was, now would be considered so outdated. And so, yeah, it's a big educational endeavor at first. And then once then as the parent, you need to set goals for how you want to parent. What is my goal for my family? What is my goal for my own health? What's my goal for my child's health? And then you strategize a way to achieve your goal on purpose.
I love it.
On purpose. That is exactly right. I mean, you are either in the rapids, floating down, bouncing off of rocks. You're in the boat where you have some control and you can kind of guide yourself, or you're trying to swim upstream, which is virtually impossible. So you have to navigate those waters in the way that's the most effective. And it's clearly in the boat, which is on purpose. I'm in a boat on purpose.
I love it. And so many, I think people, I probably was, I think I know that I was guilty of this. People that are busy working, even if you're not, think about, okay, well, this is how I'm like taking care of my health, but then I'm going to do this for my kid, which is different. And they need to, or they're eating something different because I'm on this different diet or this different exercise plan, and it's all separated and boxed out. And I think that what you're going to say is something different. We'll see. But first off, I guess my thing is that I want to get to. Tell us, because I know that you like to focus on sort of 4 main pillars of health, and it's not just about food. There's
Right. Yeah. So healthy lifestyle, it's kind of boring. Nobody wants a healthy lifestyle. I mean, parents, I would mention this in the office and people would just glaze over, but it's really, so the 4 pillars that I talk about are nutrition, sleep, movement or exercise, and then emotional regulation skills. So we want our kids to be able to tolerate any feeling that they're having, either negative or positive. We want them to be able to identify their feelings and feel their feelings. So they don't, so they need to learn that skill so they don't end up using other, mechanisms to avoid their feelings, like over scrolling on social media, overeating, over drinking, over shopping, over everything. So there's a lot of work that can be done for kids to learn how to manage your emotions.
I love that. Actually, so we always talk about what we think are the 3 most important pillars of health, which is always diet, sleep, and exercise, probably in that order. But I really think maybe I'm going to start adding in the emotional, what do you call it? Emotional regulation
Yeah.
response.
Sometimes for
Yes.
adults, they call it stress management, but it's
Yeah.
really learning to feel your feelings and accept the feelings that you're having. Doesn't mean you can't try to change them, but part of what the problem is, and with so many people who tend to overeat or emotionally eat, is it's more of an under feeling problem than an overeating problem, because we eat when we're bored, we eat when we're sad, some people eat when they're happy or stressed. I mean, we got away from using food as like nutrition, and so learning to feel your feelings is super important skill
Well,
set.
it's the driver for everything. I mean,
Mhm.
you feel like crap, you don't want to work out. You feel like crap, your sleep's off. Or for some people, they feel like crap, they eat less, or then you're using other substances,
Exactly.
and then it just impacts your sleep. And it's so honestly, I mean, it really becomes one of the most important things is figuring out your emotions, the reason behind why you're feeling that way, why you're doing what you're doing, and your purpose, and then all the other healthy things that you're trying to impart in your life can maybe fall into place.
That's really fascinating because I like this under feeling idea, because I read a book called Unoffendable, and it's a Christian-based book about, why should we, no one gets to have righteous anger except God. And I was like, really? Not even me? Because I'm pretty righteous and I'm pretty angry. And then I realized, what it really uncovered for me is start asking the question, okay, why is this guy that cut you off in traffic making you angry? Why? So you're not
He's making you angry.
right. I'm angry already, and he
Yeah.
just brought it out of me. And so it's fascinating experience because it wasn't, you actually felt it more. It's like, okay, now you're keenly aware that you're in this state. and then you ask the question, and then all of a sudden, as you keep doing that, you become less angry and less of a slave to those emotions. So you have to feel them, but at the same time, you don't have to nurse them or indulge them.
Mhm.
And that is that, I mean, we used to just call that being a grown up.
Okay, but so let's
And
ask her, how do you deal with that with kids because they're not grown-ups?
Right. And
Yeah.
so this is what coaching is. This is what coaching is. And so this is why parents need to learn this skill first and foremost so that they can model that for their kids. Because what we're talking about is that meta skill of being able to think about your thinking. You know,
yes,
most of us think like, oh, that guy cut me off, you know? Well, you know, if somebody cut me off, what if I chose to think, oh, he must be running late, or maybe his mom is in the hospital, or you know? And so you can see that it's not the fact that he cut me off. You know, it's not the fact, you know, it's not the weather that's making you mad. It's not your boss that's making you mad. Frankly, it's not your weight that's, you know, making you upset. It's the thought that you're having about that thing. And so here's the most freeing, this is what's so freeing about it and so wonderful, is that when you realize that thought, you might have had it, you know, unconsciously, or it just came up to you. They say we have, you know, 60,000 thoughts a day. It's like a super highway up there, you know, but when you realize that your thought is causing your feeling, you can go back and say, okay, do I want to keep that thought with me because it's causing me anger? You know, if someone cuts you off, the thought, that guy's a jerk, or, you know, or how dare he do that to me, or whatever, that thought's causing you anger. It's not causing him any problem. He's just off on his own way. So what you really have the power to do is that thought helping me in any way? And do I like the experience that that thought is having? Or do I like the experience that that thought is creating for me? And if you don't, then you can go back and change your thought, you know, and you can control your whole experience. So this is a very, you know, this meta skill, this is an advanced, this takes your prefrontal cortex to really think on purpose. And kids, as you guys know, kids' prefrontal cortexes are not developed, or people's prefrontal cortex not developed till you're 25, 26 years old. So we can't expect, I don't expect my 11-year-old to be able to kind of make all those connections. And hence why I wouldn't expect a kid to be able to have the skill set or the tools to make the changes that they need to make to keep themselves super healthy emotionally and physically. So that's why parents can learn the skill. And, for me, like, I learned this skill and I'm modeling it for my son. So he's 11 now. And then when he's 15, he's going to be in a different developmental place, but he'll have a different interpretation of the same skill that I'm modeling. So by the time his brain does mature, he'll already have that skill under his belt. It's such a wonderful gift to give your kids.
I love it because you're right. Most parents haven't figured this out. Even some of us who know better forget to go through this. And so it's a really important task to learn if you want to help your kids, and then to model that in front of them so that they can learn it.
We don't talk about it like this. I mean, in fact, we teach our kids, you hurt my feelings. You or so-and-so did this to me and now I'm, whatever. So the way that we talk about how we feel, we don't own. We're not in true ownership of our, we're not being emotional adults. We're in the situation. So we're not owning why we're thinking and feeling what we are.
Right. And then to the opposite of that, nothing drives me more crazy than when you see, I saw it a couple weeks ago. I was on vacation and this little toddler was just out of control and crying and, throwing a temper tantrum, and the parent, and even my daughter, who's 26, figured it out. this parent's looking at this kid going, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why don't you want to do that? And my daughter, who's 26, goes, the kid is 2 years old. He can barely talk. He doesn't know why he's upset or mad. Probably because he's got sand in his diaper. But so,
yeah, but in fairness, sand in your diaper is pretty horrible.
But to the point of, I was just gonna ask you, it's like, right, obviously modeling that is good for kids. Your kid can't figure it out when they're 2 or when they're 5. So I guess, is there any time when you can start to sort of not hold them accountable, but begin to challenge them a little bit? Like, is it in baby steps when like they're 11 or 15 and say,
I think all the way along, for sure. My son is, if I make him turn off the TV, you making me so mad, and I'm like, actually, it's okay. I'm not making you mad. I'm enforcing a boundary that we have about the TV. And I said, it's fine for you to be mad. That's fine. You can't throw things. You can't hit anybody, but it's fine to be frustrated. It's normal, in fact, to be frustrated when you're doing something that you want to be doing and it comes to an end and you don't want it to end. So all the way along, I'm trying to teach him that he owns his experience, even today, this morning, we're getting near the end of school and, I think there's like 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks left. And he was just like, can I stay home? Can I stay home today? And I blah, blah, blah. And we just said, well, no, you're going to go to school. And you can choose to keep thinking these thoughts all day, but how is that going to make you feel? You're going to have a terrible experience of school today if you're just miserable, if you just keep thinking this is terrible, this school's horrible, I was like, you could choose to think, okay, I have to go to school today. There's only 15 days left. You could choose a different thought and then you'll have a different experience of your day. So I don't know, for me, like that's my approach with him because I want him to get this sooner rather than later. Because when I got this, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had learned this when I was a child myself, because it's so freeing, because you realize you are the owner of your own experience. And if you want a different experience, you can create that for yourself.
Yes.
Perfect. I love it. And that I think is going to be the biggest part. I would think be the hardest part, but other people might differ with me when we start talking about weight management and so forth. But that's huge, because everything else I think flows from this to make choices and why we're doing.
Yeah, which is really interesting, because we have a podcast we did almost 3 years ago called "We Have 4 F's to Give," and for us it was faith, family, finance, and fun. And sort of how do you integrate this into your life and the appropriate priorities that you should give to each one. But it's interesting that, you can almost say that from a coaching perspective, starting with the emotional side is clearly, that's the foundational
is that what you
thing,
do?
right? You can tell people what to eat and what not to eat, but if you really want it to stick, they have to have that emotional horsepower to be able to maintain that without being motivated, right? If you got to psych yourself up all the time, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So here's, for an adult to, if I was coaching an adult to help them, if they wanted to lose weight, the recommendation is, okay, make a plan in advance what you're going to eat, that, what you think is healthy for you, what you want, because it needs to come from the person themselves. And then when the time comes, make a plan for tomorrow. And when the time comes, you can fully expect your brain to offer you, that's not that good. I don't even want that anymore. That was a bad idea. Now I'm going to have whatever, pizza, or this would be so much easier. So that's where the coaching comes, like after the fact. So you see then they see what happens. Like, did you follow your plan or did you not? And we don't want people like white knuckling it or, willpower. You can't, that's not a sustainable thing. But what is sustainable is really understanding why you're choosing to do what you in fact want to do. So you can work on creating thoughts on purpose that are going to make it so much easier for you to follow the plan that you want. And so where coaching helps people is that, like, so then someone would come to a coaching call and they would say, I made this plan for myself, but I didn't follow it. I ate, I went out or whatever. Okay. So let's go back, and what exactly were you thinking? We try to pinpoint what they were thinking, and then which was then creating the feeling of, either, what's the right word? I was going to say laissez-faire. That's the wrong word, but like lessen the intensity of wanting to do what you're going to do. But once you understand your thinking about why you didn't do what you can do, then you can decide if you want to change that or not.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how, because we talk about faith being the filter with which you see the world, and that can be, there's 8 billion people. I guess there could be 8 billion different ones, but it really is true. Like it fascinates me how people that know better still do unbelievably terrible behaviors to themselves, just from a health perspective. I'm not getting into, moral arguments or anything, but it's just,
well, why are so many doctors so unhealthy? Overweight?
That's exactly what I was just getting to.
Smoking. My cardiology doctors, when I was in med school, they were all smoking.
We had a thoracic surgeon.
Yes.
We had a thoracic surgeon that he could not make it through a lung case without scrubbing out, letting the senior resident finish the case, and he would have a smoke. And then people would bug him about it. He goes, well, I know how I'm going to die.
It was just,
and you just sit there and you go,
excuse.
I mean, the guy actually lived he worked forever, but it's just like, wow.
So he probably picked up, this is conjecture, but he probably picked up smoking because he didn't know how to handle those feelings of stress or discomfort or whatever. So he reached out for something else to kind of buffer that feeling away, And so that's the power. Like, you can change any of these habits by being willing to identify what feeling you're trying to avoid, and then work on being willing to feel that feeling. It's so powerful.
So we could go down a whole hour bunny trail on,
but
you don't want to identify that feeling because it's too painful, etc. And then there's all of that, which at that point, do you recommend true counseling, psychotherapy with counselors or psychiatrists? When there's a lot of baggage going on, say someone's got abuse or addictions and things like that.
That's probably not really the realm of coaching, at least in my opinion. That's more therapy. And so, a quick way to describe the difference between coaching and therapy. Coaching is very future looking. Like, how do you want to be? How do you want to show up? And how can we move forward from here? You're at point A right now. How can we get you to point B where you want to be? The client decides where they want to be. And the coaching helps you move from point A to point B. But if you are really, have trauma or struggling, and then therapy for sure. And that's not really a appropriate thing for coaching.
Yeah. And so it brings to mind the next sort of pillar and thing I want to talk about, which is the eating portion and healthy diet. Because for a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, I'm surmising, but if there is an issue with overeating or undereating, obesity, anorexia, any of those tendencies because of trauma, then I think addressing that through therapy
100%.
Yeah, it's gonna come up.
Specialist. And
Right.
yeah, if any parent has any concerns that their child has a true eating disorder, that would be the first immediate recommendation. Is this coaching is not for you. Your child needs professional help.
Or maybe the parent too.
Yeah, I was just going to say
that. So what brings me to that is, let's talk about the eating and how to, you talk about modeling to deal and provide and hope, get your child eating healthy. And when people come in, it's like, well, they just want to eat the crap on the plate. Like our kid only ever wanted to eat peanut butter pancakes and bacon, I think, for the first half of his life.
But he's now an Ironman triathlete, somehow that worked out.
I got to the point where I'm like, it's just too stressful. He can eat. I'll let him eat that for a while, and then later I tried again with things, and obviously he eats healthy. But so what does a parent do? And especially if the parent themselves has unhealthy eating habits, or doesn't know. So why don't you just take it from there? And how do you start with?
Well, I think the one place to start is just education, and for all of us to kind of understand, here we are in 2023 in our modern food supply, but we are living in a very ancient, evolutionarily ancient body.
Yep.
And our bodies weren't designed to handle the foods that the vast majority of kids make up the vast majority of a kid's diet today, for most people, or for a lot of people. And honestly, this is for kids who are carrying extra weight, but it's also equally as true for every child. In my opinion, no child needs Coca-Cola, right? Like, your body just wasn't designed to handle 39 grams of, sugar, fructose in 4 ounces or whatever that is. So I think some basic education about the science of how our bodies are handling these highly processed foods which have so many added sugars, and our bodies, it is very complex, right? Like, when I studied for the obesity medicine boards, it was so fascinating and so interesting and so clear that we don't even 100% know what exactly is going on. And
Really?
2 kids in the same family can react very differently to the same food. So, you can have one child who eats, X and tends to gain weight easily. Another child might not, just because they have a different chemical makeup and they have different hormonal response to the foods. So I think there's some pretty basic education for parents about like added sugars, like, trying to limit added sugars, and like what we really constitutes a healthy diet for a kid.
Right.
So my recommendation is try to eat as much as possible whole, real, unprocessed foods.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I don't want to go too far down this wormhole, but it's interesting because we might do an episode. We have a informal live stream we do called Docktails with Cocktails, where we mix a drink and talk about funny stuff.
I saw that.
But it's really interesting because processed food was a really good thing, and until it wasn't. Just like everything that we do in medicine, antibiotics were really good until we gave them to absolutely every mammal in the history of the earth. And so it's
So
fascinating.
you want to talk about all the dino nuggets I gave the kids
Oh yeah,
when we were both working?
My favorite. No, I thought of this. My favorite, because again, like 2 doctors, we still didn't even really understand the nutritional aspects of this. Was that Go-Gurt?
Oh,
Yeah.
The Go-Gurt. I mean, it's basically just, there's so much sugar in it.
Yeah.
It has 2 molecules of yogurt for every like 500 molecules of sugar. So you might as well just be giving your kid candy. Our daughter ate so many of those, she pooped the exact same color.
it was blue.
It was blue.
So she's having osmotic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like literally we gave her a colonoscopy prep with Go-Gurt and sugar, and wondered why she was wound up.
It's blueberry flavored. It's blueberries, and then I
But
started.
it's marketed as healthy, and and so this is where so many parents, if you don't have a health background or you're not really interested in this kind of thing, you're kind of relying on marketing. You're kind of relying on the packages. And then you're thinking these granola bars are amazing. The breakfast cereals are so healthy for you. Start the day off right with, 40 grams of sugar. And this is the challenge. And this is what's just so criminal about the marketing and the food supply, and how we're letting, kids just suffer for money, really, for the companies so their companies can make money.
But we literally have a regulatory agency that's supposed to like be the watchdog on this stuff, and they came up with the food pyramid that puts whole grains at the bottom. The foundation of your diet is supposed to be carbohydrates. It's like,
but aren't they part of the same government that's subsidizing the grains out there? I mean,
but that's exactly the point.
Yeah, I mean, that, of course, but this is the problem, right?
Yeah.
The medical advice we're giving people is not working for anybody.
Well, and that's correct. But that's the single biggest frustration I have, which is which is just look around. Okay, just look around. Look at a picture. There's these famous pictures of people walking down the street in New York City in 1955, and there is they're all normal weight. There is not a single. You cannot find an obese, let alone a morbidly obese person. Okay, now take the same picture at the same place, and it is exactly the opposite. Well, why? Something changed. Something happened. It wasn't magic. People in totality of the United States didn't just all of a sudden all become undisciplined food
Right.
addicts.
Exactly.
It's impossible.
Exactly.
It's what they're eating. It's obvious. And
Yeah.
I just saw a stat this morning. I don't know if it's true. I'd have to double check it. But that in the last 100 years, we have increased our sugar consumption, not carbohydrate consumption, raw sugar consumption by 100 times.
Yeah.
And I believe that because everything has hidden sugar in it. I mean,
Mm.
beef jerky, which has, for 80 calories, you get 10 grams of protein. That's a pretty good ratio. And it still has sugar in it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. And so the American Heart Association, I think the WHO, a bunch of these big regulatory agencies recommend. So they recommend for 0 to 2 years old, no added sugars. So, that's like all of those puffs and nummy crackers, all of that stuff. Like, so kids shouldn't be eating that. And then from 2 years to 19 years old, the maximum amount of daily recommended sugar is 25 grams, which is around 6 teaspoons. So if you become a label reader, which is such a wonderful thing to be, first of all, there's more than 270 different names of sugar. So the food companies know how, and they label things by weight. So they don't put all of one kind of sugar in it because that would bump that right up to the top. So the first ingredient you'd see would be sugar. They split the sugars up into 5 or 6, 7 different kinds. So they weigh less. So they're further down the labeling.
Smart.
It's just, so people don't know. They don't know what they're eating. And spaghetti sauce has sugar in it, barbecue sauce, things you wouldn't even think have sugar in them do. And this, to me, this is what's causing so much childhood overweight and problems, metabolic problems in our kids. And all of us, frankly, but our kids for sure.
Well, and I've read some stats, and it's horrifying too. That's even understatement. But basically, that says that if you're by the time you're 7 or 8, if you're like obese, especially if you're morbidly obese. I mean, I've had 5-year-olds that way. I'd come home and I'd say, "May I saw a 5-year-old that weighs 10 pounds more than you." And that is not a super uncommon occurrence. And you sit there and you go, like, I've seen these stats where it's like essentially they never lose weight. Like they
for sure could, but it takes a major lifestyle overhaul,
So what do you, I'd like to kind of get into the nitty gritty of how, and what do you do when people come in and they say, my kid's already overweight and, whatever issues are going on, they're 10, 12. How do I talk to my child about their diet, or do I talk to them, or what do I do? Or do you recommend a diet? What do you say to that parent?
So my first approach is always I want parents to approach this whole issue from a place of true love and true acceptance of your child, because this is where the harm comes in. When a child feels like I need to change because something's wrong with me. Oh, I have this problem and something's wrong with me. No, nothing. So the parent can accept work on accepting your child just as they are right now, and we can change things from a place of love. And love for yourself as the parent and love for your child, because we only want our kids to experience that their parent loves them and fully accepts them for who they are, even if they're weighing whatever X amount, right? That's what every kid needs. Kids are looking at their parents as a mirror, and we want to reflect back to them, you are 100% valuable. You are 100% worthy. You don't have to change anything for me to love you and for you to be acceptable. And so from there, then depending on the age of kids, you don't have to say anything. You can just this is why the working with the parent is so powerful, because your child doesn't really have to do anything. You just, as the parent, need to change, potentially what you're buying, what you're serving, how you guys are eating, eat as a family, cook at home more, all of these things that are in the parent's control. And you're not asking your child to do anything different. I mean, they are now going to be offered different food, so they will have to change, but that's not their choice. And you're not saying, well, would you rather have dino nuggets or, this other chicken? You're not making that an option for them. You've decided as the parent, how do I want to show up? How am I going to preserve and protect my child's health? What do I think is important for them? And then, child, here you are. Here's your choices. Here's what we're having for dinner. And I'm going to help you make those, transition into doing that. So,
I mean, it's so basic. It sounds too simple, but it's really the way it is to, with anything, model behaviors or model food eating behaviors, or model, I mean, what European countries do, which, we'll get to the exercise portion, model healthy activity behaviors.
Well, and if you're going to do the European method, then maybe we should be feeding them a glass of red wine.
Okay, well, but it really,
they calm down a lot.
It starts with just, you're right, getting the healthy foods, controlling things at home. I mean, obviously, if they go to a birthday party or they're at school, I mean, then that's when things get tough, right? Is what they're eating at the cafeteria.
It's easy when they're little, although parents of little kids don't think it's easy. You know what I mean? It's hard in every stage. But yeah, for my son, he's biking around town. He has some pocket money from mowing the lawn, and so he can make his own choices. And that's fine. I do not want to micromanage him, and I don't even think that's healthy for him. But I want to try to help him connect the choices that he's making with his how he feels physically, and the downstream consequences of what he's doing, either good or bad,
Right.
And that's parenting, right? That's teaching our kids.
Yes. I would recommend never take a toddler or a child under 5 in the shopping cart to the cereal aisle. Just don't go to the cereal aisle.
Like, exit promptly.
No, like the cereal, breakfast cereal is the most idiotic nutritional thing in the entire history of processed food, in my opinion.
I know.
It's entirely unnecessary.
I think one of our children threw a fit in the cereal aisle once or twice, and we literally picked them out of the cart and left, because it was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not subjecting myself, the people in here, and it's time to discipline this kid.
And you can understand why. The packages are so amazing. They look amazing. Right. You've probably seen ads for it. And their little brain is just like, I want what I want right now. And they don't have the wherewithal to understand what's going on.
Cereal, children's breakfast cereal is nutritional pornography.
There you go. So any tips, because people are going to, they like practical things, like for the kid that just refuses to eat, say you're eating healthy and you're putting the peas and the potatoes and you've got your little piece of chicken or whatever on there, and the kid is just like absolutely refusing.
Yeah.
What do you recommend, as a pediatrician, as a coach now? Is it like 7 times you have to put it in front of them, or what is that thing where they have to
exposures, they call that exposure. And they say it's up like 15 plus. Some people say even more than that. So there's lots of recommendations, and my first recommendation is to make food, like make the table a stress-free zone. You don't want to be like, eat that, 2 more bites, take more bites of that, stop eating that, No. So there's a thing called the division of responsibility. Ellen Satter, she's a nutritionist. I believe she's a nutritionist, but this is something most pediatricians know. And it divides feeding responsibilities, the parents' jobs and the kids' jobs. And the parents' job is to decide what foods are going to be available, when they're going to be available, the timing, and where. So what to eat, where to eat, and when to eat. And the kids' job is to decide if they're going to eat and how much they're going to eat. And so this is really wonderful, with the caveat that you have to be super careful about these processed foods. Because if you're putting, a big bowl of macaroni and cheese and you're saying, okay, you decide how much you're going to eat, and, then don't be surprised if the child just consumes that, right? So I think the division of responsibility is awesome, with mostly real whole unprocessed foods.
And let's talk about, you said the table. So how important is that, to sitting at the dining table?
There's a wonderful website. I think it's called familydinnerproject.org. And it talks about, I think it's out of Harvard, and it talks about the benefits of eating together as a family. And so hopefully this would be screen-free in an optimal world. Parents, put your screens away. Kids, put your screens away. Turn the TV off. But there's data that shows that there's, decreased risk of extra weight, decreased risk of anxiety, depression, higher academic achievement, like higher vocabulary in preschoolers, lower teen substance use, lower teen pregnancy. Everybody in the family eats more fruits and vegetables. I mean, it's basically like everything amazing that we want for our kids, all from family dinners. And so prioritizing eating together as a family is so powerful from what would seemingly be a simple, act. But it's the connection, it's the love, it's the acceptance, and that's why it benefits kids so much.
Right. I think that gets underemphasized so much. It's because you're right. All those things you said, how what it spurs on conversation time, time to open up and share, so many things, and it's not just.
I'd like to see how they randomize that, though, because I see tons of confounders. Because people that are generally of potentially higher intelligence, higher socioeconomics, et cetera, would be more apt, I would think, to sit down. Maybe not. Maybe they're less apt. I don't know. That's why I asked the question.
You have more TVs.
But,
I don't know.
No, but that's why I asked the question, because I just see a lot of confounders. I mean, you think back 100 years ago, everyone did this, and especially the poorer families would absolutely eat all together, and affluent families would be more disjointed. And it just begs the question, because we ate at the dinner table, I don't know, 2/3 of the time, I would think, maybe a bit more, maybe 75% of the time. And it really was powerful until May and I would start talking about work, and then the kids would freak out because they didn't want to hear about like what we
did. I would say at least, we did with our kids for sure.
Yeah, and I did as a kid growing up too. And my dad was a doctor, and we would wait for him to come home. For him to get home. And sometimes we're like, "Geez, it's like 7:30 at night. We're hungry," but we waited. Almost always, we waited for him. And I make a point to do that with my son too. I just want to make sure, because it is so powerful. It is such a beneficial thing for our kids and us. It helps adult health too. I mean, adults feel better. Yes. Adults feel more connected to their kids. Adults eat healthier when they're with their kids.
So yeah, I mean, I
it's
love
sort
that
of common sense, you would think, but again,
no, I think that gets skipped so much, and it's so powerful. We focus on get rid of the crappy food in your diet, eat healthy, but I'm like, that time together is huge.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful for sure.
So
I want to.
I know what you want to talk about next,
you do.
and I do too, because I'm going to start off with, I love the concept of ancient wisdom, because if ancient wisdom is really wisdom, it's ancient. If it's not, if it was ancient BS, we wouldn't know about it, because people would have thrown it out a long time ago. So I find it's interesting. If you look back at Hebrew law, there's, as far as your body, there's obviously like sexual propriety, which is a big deal, But there's all these dietary laws, and the only law about your body in the 10 Commandments is rest, which I find incredibly fascinating, because in our society, rest is for the weak, when really sleep is for the strong. So let's talk about that, because I think this has been entirely neglected.
Especially in kids.
And we have just done a terrible job with these beautiful little developing brains in sleep depriving the heck out of them. So speak to sleep.
Yeah, sleep is by far, I mean, all of them are so important, but honestly, like sleep, if you're not getting enough sleep, everything else is going to suffer. Because your hormones won't be right. You're going to be making worse food choices. We know this, and you won't have any energy to exercise. You just won't feel good. So for families to prioritize sleep, and there's recommendations for, depending on how old you are, what the amount of sleep you should be getting, and by hours. And it decreases, but by the time you're an adult, you should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. So for most teenagers, the recommendation is 8 to 10 hours a night. My son's age, he should be getting 9 to 13 or something like that. I forget exactly, but there's recommendations. And the screens have had a major negative effect on kids being able to get some sleep. And so that's another thing that the parents can decide on purpose. How are we going to approach this issue? How do we value the sleep as a family value for us, a health value for us, and how are we going to approach this and handle it? Because, I mean, we could talk about sleep forever. It's just so important. You can't be a healthy person if you're not getting sleep on a regular basis.
I just think these poor kids. So the first thing, we see happening, and that, when they go to school, it's so early in the morning. If you live rural, they have to catch the bus.
Too early.
Yeah. All right. Probably even urban, catch the bus. But too early, they're up at 6, riding on this bus for hours. And then a lot of kids, these after school activities or evening activities, homework, they're not going to bed, and then they're having to get up at 6 in the morning, so they're not getting enough sleep.
Right.
So I guess that's such a hard thing. How do parents sort of pick and choose? Do they have to make conscious choices? Like, no, you're not going to participate in that activity because it's like getting to be too late.
You have to. This is the hard part, right? Because you could actually have your kids signed up for so many things. They wouldn't get home until, I could sign my 11-year-old up every day of the week. He wouldn't get home until 8 o'clock at night if I chose to sign him up for all this stuff. But that's just not healthy. So yeah.
What do you oh, sorry to interrupt, but I'm thinking, then there's the teenage years, and we all know, or I shouldn't say we all know, people know that teenagers like to stay up late.
Yeah.
And there's a biological reason for that, is because their sleep-wake cycle shifts.
Right.
And a lot of people probably don't know that, but that they, technically probably should be staying up till 11 and then sleeping until 9, but school doesn't work that way. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How do you navigate that kind of stuff? I mean, you can't pull your kid out of public school necessarily and homeschool them during teenage years just because their brain doesn't want to go.
So there's the education piece. You'd have to really spend time with your child, impressing upon them, and kind of trial and erroring with them, like, how do you feel when you get 5 hours of sleep? Let's look at it. And then how do you feel when you get 8 hours of sleep? And then, there are things you can do, help your child prioritize getting their homework done earlier, so they're not starting their homework at 11 o'clock at night, and trying to problem solve with them, because we want them to own their lives, especially as teens, getting ready to head off into the world. Okay, you've got sports, you've got homework, you've got friends, and you've got family, us, dinner, whatever. How do you think you could get all of this done? And so parents can really work with their kid while fostering their kids' autonomy, and helping them, make a plan and tweaking that plan as as you go along. But I think educating your child as to the true significance of sleep, which is so underrated and so undervalued in our society, in our community, in our Western world. I mean, that is, if a kid truly believes that sleep is important for them, then they'd be more willing to do the things that they're going to have to do in the moment, such as turn their screen off, to be be willing to like kind of succumb to that sleep pressure when it builds up enough for them, right? And it even means things like, the caffeine drinks they're drinking, the teens are drinking in the afternoon, and really kind of it's a big picture. The whole health of your child is this big picture strategy that's going to just take a lot of effort and a lot of focus for parents to really wrap their heads around.
I read, and I love this book, and I know I saw you posted it on Facebook or blogged about it, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing stuff in there. I think everyone should read it. There's some cool stuff about, mammals and birds and how they sleep with half their brain, and dolphins, but it talks about the importance of sleep deprivation, and how that's worse than almost impaired driving with drugs or alcohol, and the lack of memory and retention. And so
we know that as physicians, right? Like our lifestyle. Like
yes.
We went through this. We lived this ourselves,
Yeah, it impacted my choices as a career physician, because I wanted to be a surgeon. And after a few of those rotations on doing plastic surgery, getting up for rounds at 4 a.m. and being there all night, I'm like, I'm never going to survive, because my health was really suffering. I had gone through some stuff, and I'm like, no, not going to happen.
Yeah, but that's why God made cigarettes and coffee, man. You just
okay. So talking to substances, we talked about caffeine. Do you ever recommend teenagers or anyone using things like melatonin at night to help get them to sleep if it's like they just cannot get to sleep by 10 at night? Or would you try to focus on other things?
The data on this is so confusing to me. Like Matthew Walker, the author, the PhD author of Why We Sleep, he says melatonin is useful for jet lag, and pretty much that's his only recommendation for using melatonin. I know lots of people who use melatonin and think it helps them. So I don't, I'm not sure. I think the problem with melatonin is there's no, my understanding is that there's no like regulation of it, meaning you don't know what you're actually getting. It says 3 milligrams, it says 3 milligrams, but really what is that? And so I think there's other ways, other sleep hygiene things that you can do that would really help you get to sleep, help kids get to sleep, keeping the room dark, like turning, making sure you have the shades are blocked out, so as dark as possible. Another tip that teenagers really like is taking a warm shower, about an hour or so before you want to go to bed, because you get really hot in the shower, you warm up, and then you get out of the shower and your body temperature cools down, and that increases your sleep pressure and makes you sleepier. So that helps you fall asleep faster. And then they say waking up at the same time, not necessarily actually going to bed at the same time, but waking up at the same time every day is a lot more helpful for your body's hormonal, circadian rhythms versus, sleeping till noon on Saturday and Sunday and waking up at 6 a.m. So I know that's a challenge for parents too. And people think that they can catch up on their sleep. And I think to some degree you can, but
that's a good tip, because my schedule and life has changed in the last year, and I'm a night person. And so not having to wake up at a regular time, and I'm bouncing all over, and I can tell the difference. Like I feel horrible if I'm especially changing by an hour to 2 hours when I'm waking up. And it's huge for everybody, but especially for kids too. So kick them out of bed at 6 a.m. on the weekend and have them do chores instead of sleeping in.
Well, but that's an interesting point though, May, because when you think, I mean, I like going back 100 years because people can imagine that. And you think if you're an agrarian, which most of us were, at least in the United States, for a large portion of the history of the United States, was you got up when the sun got up, you went outside and you worked to survive. Then the sun went down, you went to bed. And that's kind of how human beings have been, conditioned for
Until artificial
gazillions
light
of
came along.
years
Yeah.
to, exactly before artificial light. So, you crawl out of the cave, you hunt mastodon for 8 or 9 hours, you eat some mastodon, you get, it gets dark, you go to sleep. And, it's like now it gets dark, you come home from work, especially if you live in, northern areas, it gets dark early, and then you watch artificial light till 11:30 at night, and
Flip
then you
on
lay
all
in
the
bed and
lights,
watch
yeah.
more artificial light, and then you wonder why you sleep terrible.
Right.
Just simple stuff like that. It's just
Lots of times teenagers can understand, like, if they've ever been camping, because most teenagers are not staying up till 2 a.m. in their tent. They're falling asleep because they're bored. Number one, they're tired and it's dark and they're kind of bored, and so that message of, like, you have to allow yourself to be bored at night, without, put the screen down, even if you're a person who really likes music, and even that music is keeping you going, keeping your brain going. And so there's so many things you can do if you prioritize that and realize the value of it, and we can help our kids make that happen for themselves.
I love it. And then, of course, the fourth thing, which we barely even scratched the surface of this, is the movement / exercise portion, right?
Yes.
I
sometimes say movement instead of exercise, because sometimes exercise can be a little too harsh for people, and they think, oh my God, this is going to be painful and sweating, and no way. But if you just think about movement, at least as a starting place, like that's more accessible to people.
I love it because, there's so many people who say, oh, I hate exercise, I hate sweating, it's not my thing. And it's just like, get out and do things as simple as working in the garden or going around the block. So do you recommend parents start doing this with their kids when they're young, or
100%.
just model the activity, or both, or any tips for that?
Everything. Yeah, the sooner the better. Kids love to be outside. Kids love to play, and that's exercise for them, really. That's all the little kids really need. I think the official recommendation is that kids should be getting at least an hour a day of exercise or movement. And kids just love, tag, like all of the kid games. If parents are willing, first of all, if you have other kids in your neighborhood, get them over, and then that'll be a lot easier on you as the parent, because then you won't have to be out there. But if there were times, like for me, when I'm an only parent, and so I have my son, and I'm like, okay, I've got to go play tag or bubbles or soccer or pass the ball or whatever, because I wanted him to be outside moving around.
no, it's
times have changed, because we grew up, same thing.
yeah.
It was what you did, and in fact, the parents would be screaming at us to come home, and it was the sun setting.
Yeah.
But
now there's this
things have changed where people are afraid to let their kids go outside, almost, because it's like stranger danger and all these horrible things happening in the world, or the screen time. So I think we need to kind of find a happy medium.
Yeah, there is a bit of a cult of safety. I remember, I think I actually recorded it. It was the local Portland news channel or whatever. The news had this, bad messages in Franklin the turtle. And I'm like, what? And it showed these kids sitting there eating popcorn on a couch, and Franklin was riding a bicycle, but he wasn't wearing a helmet. So he was sending a bad health message. And I was like, at least the turtle
in the shell. He's
right.
Totally fine.
At least the turtle is riding a bicycle, not sitting on the couch eating popcorn, A, and B, it's a freaking turtle. So, and they don't ride bikes last time I saw. They have a lot of trouble getting off of fence posts, let alone getting on the bicycle. And I'm like, who writes this? This is insane.
Yeah.
So,
well, with regard to like the stranger danger and the actual safety, my understanding is that the world, even living in the United States, here where we are, all of us, it's safer than it's ever been.
Exactly.
And we just need to believe that. And
Yes.
that's what parents need to work on, their own anxiety and their own willingness, because what we want is our kids to have confidence in themselves and explore, not go crazy and wander all around if they're too little, but we don't want to teach them that the world is a scary place and you're not allowed to go outside and you have to stay inside. I mean, some communities for sure they're living in a different situation, and then those parents know best if you're living in an inner city or you're having a problem like that in your community, for sure. But the vast majority, I think, of the country, or at least large parts of the country, are very safe, and we just need to encourage our kids to go outside, force them to go outside. In fact, sometimes go outside, go do something, go play outside.
So
I love
it's
it.
interesting, this safety cult stuff. It brings up a story from, I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, so in the middle of Canada, like almost the geographic center. And so little town, 150 at that time, maybe 150,000 people. Well, we actually ended up in 1975 having a serial killer.
Oh my
So
goodness.
everyone is freaking out. And the serial killer killed like 8 to 12-year-old children. So
Oh
this
my
was a
goodness.
horrific story, massive news story. So I asked my mother, can I ride my bike to my friend's house, which was probably, I don't know, 8 miles away, which,
8?
oh yeah,
Jeez.
which was, might as well have been a million miles
He
away.
said, "How fast can you ride?"
And this was the response from my mother, who was born in 1928. So it tells you a little bit of the story on how to deal with potentially getting serial killed. She said, "Don't ever stop if a car comes up to you and starts to drive slow. Don't talk to anyone and pedal fast. And now get out of the house and go to your friends." And I was like, fully equipped,
Yep.
little stumpy
I think you
10-year-old
imagined the
kid.
distance. Things were always bigger in your head back then.
No, but I mean, this is
But
this is a
still.
huge case. I mean, this guy's still literally
Wow.
alive and in jail. I mean, he killed like 6 kids
Oh my
in
gosh,
a
what a
tiny city. It
horrible
was
story.
wild. It was
Yeah.
just wild. And it was, and
Anyways, just go play.
and I wasn't wearing a helmet.
Well, it is a fear. It is a fear of parents, but it is something that you need to assess your own risk. But I think really like we said, the world, it's safer now than it's ever been, is what they're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. So
think that's
just
true.
get moving. I love it. And I know you have an ebook with 10 steps to transform your child's health and tips in there. I'm sure you don't want to give them all away. But
Well, it's fine. They're mostly the common sense things that we talked about. I have it like here. It's kind of, one thing I did want to say from a couple topics ago, when we were talking about how to talk to your kid about weight, one thing that I think is super important, that I think mitigates a lot of the potential damage, is focusing on health and not on weight, because a kid doesn't need to worry about the number on the scale, and what the parents and what we really want to be going for. All of these behaviors that we're talking about are to improve your overall health, not just to get the number down on a scale. So I think it's really important to focus on health and not weight. And that's a really important way for parents to talk about things, because I have these like 10 steps, for example. And so a parent could say like, "Oh, I read or I learned that we should be limiting our added sugars for our health, all of us." And then you're not saying like, "Well, we need to lose weight, or you need to lose weight, and so now we have to limit our sugars." No, because just like we said earlier, what's appropriate for kids with extra weight is actually appropriate for all of every kid and all of us, right? So we all, these are the recommendations for all of us to keep our health as good as possible.
Perfect.
So there are things like drink water. It sounds so simple, but it's like all the things that we've already been talking about that our grandmas already
Yeah.
knew to tell us: go outside and play. Don't eat a lot of sugar. Don't have so much dessert. Get good sleep. They're just really common sense, kind of boring. I wish it was exciting, and I wish it was more. I don't know what the right word is. But honestly, when you do these things, then it is exciting to see how good you feel. And it is exciting for your child to feel really good and energized and be able to just be a kid and live their life. And that is exciting. So doing these boring things ends up with an exciting result.
Now that's a wonderful way to wrap this up, because I've often said that, motivation and all of this sort of sexy up stuff is not what changes your life. Ritual is what changes your life. When you get disciplined rituals where it's like, I just get up in the morning and I always work out, and that's what I do. And then I take a shower. And then I brush. And I've told patients that. I said, do you take a shower and brush your teeth every day? And they're like, well, yeah. And I said, well, then you can add other things and
Right.
make them the same kind of ritual. You don't even think about taking a shower at,
Yeah.
7:30,
Consistency. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
where can our listeners find you and your coaching and your ebook and all of these good things?
The easiest place is probably my website, which is just my name, SheilaCarrollMD.com. And then you can get the ebook, and you can, I have a blog. And so I'm just trying to provide a lot of value and education. And I work with parents. I work only with parents, so I'm not coaching the kids, to help if parents are interested in looking at themselves and looking at what changes can I make to myself that will ultimately trickle down to improve the health of my child and my whole family.
I love it.
I absolutely
I
love it.
love it. A
Oh,
pediatrician
thanks.
coaching parents to impact better health to their kids, who can then pay it forward
Yeah.
to the next
Again,
generation.
common sense. Who would have ever thought of that? So again, Dr. Sheila Carroll, thank you so much for being with us. This has just been outstanding. I know our listeners are going to love it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Okay. Wow. Again, just somebody passionate about doing something different, taking all of her experience and turning it into a new concept. And I especially love this whole idea of coaching parents as far as parenting. And I mean, it reminds me of when we brought our daughter home. Our daughter is our oldest child, and it was winter time, and I had delivered hundreds of babies by this point. I'd given a whole bunch of advice about how to care for children. So had May. We bring the kid home. She's completely bundled up in all these clothes because it was cold. She was born at the end of November. We put her down on the sofa and we looked at her and we looked at each other and we say, what do we do with it now?
It. I like how you said it.
Well, I mean, that was kind of what it felt like. And I guess it's not making any noises, but it's still breathing. So far, so good. And, this idea of coaching parents to help kids in that pediatric world is just a brilliant idea.
And honestly, what she's even doing is coaching both the parents and the kids, because it's empowering, the parents to make changes in their own health and life and pass it on to the kids. So really, it's like a trickle down effect. So I love it because she's actually reaching parents and changing the adult lifestyle as well, that they pass that on to the next generation. So what better way, right, than to start with what you're doing in the family. I really like that approach, and it's so inspirational and so exciting that she actually has found, her new passion again in medicine, and hasn't left the profession. So that's really a positive and bright spot too.
I think we're going to see more doctors reinvent themselves
I love
in the
it.
next few years.
I love it.
I have a feeling. All right. Well,
Shout out this week is to Barbara Lynn Ellison. You know who you are. Thanks for joining us on our weekly Doc Tales. I think you're on there a bit, but for sure a couple weeks ago we saw you, and we agree we could have picked better music for that segment.
I like it though.
But we're happy you enjoyed this show. We appreciate you. I miss you, Barb. So thanks for giving us a notice and shout out and comment. We love it. Well, We will be back next week with another amazing guest on our Thursday episode. I don't want to give it away. But until then, we're coming to you with our other shows with Truth Bombs on Wednesday and Docktails Repurpose on Monday. So we will see you again next time. And now we'll end the show with a special shout out to our sponsor, Wren Financial Planning. Take control of your finances and live your best life with the team at Wren Financial Planning. They handle the details while you focus on what matters. Transparent pricing, personalized solution.
Schedule a no cost, no judgment, no obligation chat with one of their planners now by clicking the link in the show notes. Your financial well-being is their priority.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
While we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible, we can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.